Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of the Recruiter podcast. Today, I'm joined by Chandrika, who is from quivly.ai, and today we're going to be talking about some of the things that hiring managers such as Chandrika from Quivly look for when hiring elite software engineers. So, Chandrika, thank you so much for joining us today. It's great to have you, and maybe just to kick us off, can you tell us a little bit about what you're working on at quivly.ai?
Thanks for having me, Harrison. Yes, I'm very excited to be here and share more about what we're building at Quivly. So at Quivly, we're building the most powerful AI native customer intelligence platform for post-sales teams. We bring together insights from foundational systems internally like CRM, billing, customer support platforms, and market signals to help our customers identify how their customers are doing in terms of their account health, when there are opportunities ripe for expansion or they're at the risk of churn. All of it without having to wrangle manual spreadsheets, all of it through our AI native agentic workflows.
You've worked at different scales of companies. You've worked at Google, you've worked at Plaid. Obviously, now you're building your own startup at Quivly. How has your approach to identifying and attracting like top talent changed or moved as you've gone from corporate to your own startup?
Yeah. In my time, for a fun fact, I at Plaid I did like 90 interviews in the first 6 months or something. So I was heavily involved in the recruiting part of Plaid's team for Plaid product team specifically. Um, and what I've realized, Harrison, is the values you look for in terms of hiring people for late stage scale ups or big corporates versus startups are quite different. At big companies, the brand and the scaffolding around the teams do a lot of the work. You know, you are hiring typically for depth in a specific swim lane. It's a much more well-oiled machine, and you are typically hiring for optimizing for skill, scale, and reliability. Versus at early stage, the signals you look for are quite different. So in my time at Google, DocuSign, Plaid, I would always look for collaboration, systems thinking, stakeholder wrangling, and the quality of the output that they're producing. Because you're working in a large organization and moving things forward is quite tricky if you're not a good collaborator, if you can't manage cross-functional relationships and stakeholders, especially in a product role, which comes with a lot of influence without authority, as they say. So you have to have a lot of influence on different stakeholders without necessarily having the authority to call the shots per se. So different things are important for those roles. But in startups, you're optimizing for slope, the rate of learning over the intercept, which is where you are at today. So when I'm hiring for a startup here at Quivly, I really care about agency and the taste and bias for action, shipping things even when there's ambiguity. So you are almost looking for like different traits and different types of skills for early stage versus late stage. Yeah.
Interesting. So you mentioned looking for that slope and looking for that, bias for action. Are there any like hard attributes that you're looking for in someone? For example, and something we've been told before is side projects. Are there any other hard signals like that that you're specifically looking for to determine if someone has the drive?
There's specific signals that are bonus, but there's no filter per se, I would say. We're really looking for individuals who are hungry, are nice people to work with, want to build something from the ground up, and value being early at a company to really build it together with, the early team members. So there's industry expertise, knowledge, their excitement about the space, how much they've read up about what we do when they show up to these interviews and how prepared they are all great signs. But these are by no means filters. One thing that has become a critical part of the hiring process for us is really work trials. To the extent possible, we do paid work trials with everyone we bring on board. And it really gives us a better understanding of what it is like to work with them on a project on an ongoing basis. And we typically try to do this in person. So that's what our like preferences, but there's always exceptions to the rules.
Right. And now, when talking to those candidates, you mentioned that Google and Plaid, obviously, those are brand names. People know about those companies. Now, when you're hiring for Quivly, it's
Yeah.
less of a brand name. It's more about like the vision and the mission. How are you presenting that opportunity to candidates and winning them over?
Yeah. For the candidates that I'm speaking to, I typically talk to them to understand what it is that they aspire to do in their careers. And I generally think of, career decisions in the form of three main pillars, I would say. Like what you're optimizing for at different points changes. But in my career, I found three things to be sort of the main questions that I've had to answer for myself to decide whether that was the right career move for me or not. One is the learning. Am I working on stuff that feels stimulating, challenging, and am I learning something on a regular basis? People, am I working with nice people, especially early on, because your relationships definitely compound over time. And if I could go back in time, I would almost make this the most important thing, more than even how challenging or interesting the work was. I would say working with great people on shitty stuff is much better than working with shitty people on interesting stuff. So yeah, I would like almost flip that if I could go back in time. Not that that has not been the case. I've been very fortunate to work with great people. But those would be two big things. And the third is the financial outcome. And that really varies from person to person. What is your level of, financial stability, how much you value that in the short term versus long term. So those are sort of the three main things that I try to think about when I think of career opportunities. And that's what I talk to our candidates about as well. Are we the right people, the right fit for them to work with? That's for them to decide. We show up as our authentic selves and are very transparent with the team that we're building in terms of the decisions we're making. And so that's the type of culture we're trying to build here. If that's their vibe, they would want to come and work with us. But yeah, for us, making sure that we are aware of the type of opportunities our early hires are expecting to get over time, over the short term, over the long term, is super important. Having that discussion with them, understanding what it is that they're optimizing for in their career at this point, really helps us understand like what we can bring to the table and if it's a mutual fit or not.
Right. Now, I've also seen that you brought on Harnish Kanani to your team, who's more of a senior advisor. Did anything change in terms of that conversation? And how do you balance early stage, more junior to mid-level hiring versus someone who's more senior like him?
Yeah, so experience is by no means a filter or a blanket filter for us, Harrison. We really want to bring people who can be instrumental in helping us move faster. As you know, with startups, if you start thinking about the odds of success, they're always stacked against us, right? So you want as many supporters in your corner as you can. Those supporters could look like early hires, where we really index on different qualities that I already mentioned in my previous response. Or they could look like investors who have spent time operating in the space, have conviction in the team's ability to execute, to run through walls, to make this dream a reality. Or they could look like advisors who have expertise in areas that we have gaps in. So there's no one sort of blanket filter in terms of like more experience or less experience we have for those people. It's really about where we feel like there is a gap. And if we were to fill that gap with people that we find are great mutual fits, would we be able to move much faster than we are right now? Because speed is so critical when you're building a startup. It's almost like you're trying to run a sprint and a marathon at the same time. So it's really important to have people who are able to help you accelerate.
Absolutely. And just in terms of filtering out the people who are not going to help you accelerate fast enough, you've mentioned you've got experience managing teams for a couple of years now. Are there any specific red flags that you would advise founders to look for when hiring?
Yeah, I would say there's like a few different patterns I look for in our work trials, in the hiring process itself. One is process before outcomes. So if there are candidates who are really focused on having a process around things, they're probably not a good fit for the early stage. There's nothing wrong with wanting that process or, wanting things to be more streamlined. That's just not what we can offer at this stage. And that's not what most candidates should want to join an early stage startup for. Sometimes people don't know that about themselves and they discover it through the process that, oh, actually, I do like having, a streamlined thing like that I'm focused on, a project that I'm working on, and nothing else, just one thing to focus on at a time. And that's totally possible for them to do at Google or Facebook or, other companies, just not at a startup. The other thing I would say we look for is the bias for perfection over progress. I think that's like detrimental to a startup success early on. You are trying to do things much faster. They don't necessarily have to be perfect in the first try. The standards for what's MVP have definitely gone up because you can do so many things so much faster than we used to be able to with AI. But I do feel like the bias for speed over perfection is still something that we hold, a lot of value for. And then just agency, I would say if folks are low agency, if we hear things like, oh, this didn't happen because this other person didn't do that, or we were blocked because of this, we really tend to like look for what is it that you did for solving that problem, unblocking yourself in that situation. What steps did you as an individual, as a candidate, take to mitigate that situation? And if we see that folks don't have very, very high agency, they're probably not the right fit for our environment right now.
Definitely. Those are some excellent points. I think founders can have a lot to learn from you. And just in terms of closing remarks here, is there anything else in your experience, either on the candidate side that you think candidates should avoid, or that they should do, or founders that they should avoid or should do in your experience that have like really made the biggest difference for you when it comes to hiring?
Yeah, look, I think moats in product and sort of execution are really going away, in my opinion. Talent really becomes the moat. And, if you are able to assemble a great team that is hungry to learn, to deliver, to, drive outcomes for the customer, is very customer obsessed, then I think, it's almost an eventuality that you're going to win at some point. It might take you longer, it might take you some time, and some forks in the road or some detours here and there. But if you have the right team, if you have the right attitude, if you have the right sort of incentives that you've created for everyone on the team, then winning is an eventuality. And I think that's what I would say to founders who are thinking about building teams from scratch, or thinking about whether to compromise on early talent because they can save on some cost, and they can get cheaper talent that could be subpar. I would say it's like worth spending that extra cash or even extra equity on the right talent and bringing the right talent on board than trying to sort of optimize for that in the short term.
Beautiful. Perfect. Well, Chandrika, thank you so much for your time. This has been incredibly valuable. If people want to learn more about you and Quivly and get in touch and use your post-sales intelligence, how can they do that?
Yeah, so we're at quivly.ai. Check us out and book a demo that if you're interested in learning more about what we can do for you. Follow us on LinkedIn, follow me on Twitter. I'm at Chandrika633 on pretty much all socials. And yeah, on LinkedIn, I'm Chandrika Maheshwari. So yeah, reach out. I'm always looking to chat with more people that I can help. And if there's anything that I can do for you, I'll be more than happy to.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me, Arson.